Hey everyone, so episode 34 is Crystal Clear and episode 35 is The Hard Way. This is honestly a pretty weird way to start an episode, but Star checks on Marco to see if he's asleep, and then she goes down to the kitchen and grabs his secret cereal box from one of the cabinets. Before she even takes a bite of the cereal, she gets frozen or crystallized by Romulus. He also freezes Marco because apparently he was making a lot of noise and it woke him up and he wanted to check and see what was going on. And so he transports Star, Marco, and himself to another different dimension. In this dimension, we get to meet another character known as Lekmet. He is considered the Chancellor of the Magic High Society. Romulus tells him that he believes that he's found the person who is responsible for the interdimensional Fritz, but when he's revealed to Lekmet that apparently he kidnapped both Star Butterfly and one of her associates, he definitely doesn't agree at all with any of his actions. His hands also don't really agree as well. That's the reason why they were bound in cloth in the first place. They're snake hands. Apparently he's born with them, they're not a curse. So Lekmet tries to call the Magic High Society to let them know what has happened and what Romulus has done, but before he even gets to do that, he ends up crystallizing him. Now of course his snake hands, they really don't agree with that either, they're very worried. And at one point, one of the hands try to call the High Society while the other one tries to distract him, and so they end up fighting. And it gets to a point where Romulus also crystallizes both of his hands. Now, because he deeply regrets what he's done, he unfreezes Star and basically interrogates her as to why she's causing the Fritz. She doesn't know what he's talking about. She's not causing the Fritz. And he explains to her that someone or something is causing the universe to be drained of its magical energy, thus is the reason why the crystal balls aren't really turning on and why there's a green vortex in the sky. He's basically been on this sort of journey to find the person that's responsible for all this. At one point, Romulus mentions how Glosric is going to make fun of him because of the fact that he froze the Chancellor, but Star mentions how he doesn't have to worry about him because he's gone now. They end up bonding over the fact that Glosric has been rude to both of them, and so they end up pretty good friends. And they make this deal where Star doesn't tell Romulus about the fact that she was frozen by him, and he doesn't tell anybody else that Star has lost both the spellbook and Glosric. The other part of the deal was that Star and Marco gets transported back into their own dimension and Romulus unfreezes Marco, and the episode ends with Marco eating floor cereal. The major purpose of this episode over the second season is to show what has been going on in the universe outside of Star and Marco's perspective, and the story is sort of being told through Romulus's point of view. There are some clues that show that Lekmet does in fact need Romulus as a caretaker, since Lekmet, he seems pretty old and can't really do a lot of things by himself. And another thing is that Romulus is the only person that's able to understand what Lekmet is saying because, he's a goat. It also indirectly shows that apparently the interdimensional Fritz can also affect individuals as well, because he once stated that apparently his crystallizing powers used to be as strong as diamonds and now it just kind of isn't anymore, and his gut feeling may also be affected as well. Like, he uses his gut feeling as basically a way to judge whether or not someone is good or bad, and he's at one point shown Star that he pretty much crystallizes pretty much anybody that he thinks is a bad person. It was also pretty interesting character development for Star as well, because she's surprisingly very mature in this episode, just how she interacts with him and how she seems to be very level-headed compared to him, where he's very he's freaking out and seems very anxious. And I think the reason why is because of the fact that she can kind of relate to what he's going through as well, because even though she may not seem like it, she may also have some anxieties as well, of the fact that, she's gonna become the future Queen of Muni, and that's a lot of stress, that's a lot of weight to carry on her shoulders, and maybe she can sort of relate to his personality type too, the fact that he's very out there and just seems very crazy and everything. One minor detail that caught my attention was the fact that while Romulus and Star were bonding over the fact that they both really don't like Glosric, is that the crystal that Glosric has on his forehead is a gift from Romulus, and that apparently he's never shown any appreciation for the fact that he was given that gift. And so he's pretty upset about it, but the thing is, if Glosric really wasn't that thankful for the gift, why would he still keep it on his forehead? Another detail that's sort of related to the crystals is the fact that Romulus also gave Star a gift, and inside one of the crystals is apparently one of the prisoners or something that he's crystallized. It's either Jack or John, I'm not really sure. It was kind of a weird detail to have in the episode, but now when I think about it, it also made me more interested as to what or who is inside the crystal that Glossaryck has on his forehead. Because you can see that he has a crystal, but you never see close up what's inside of it, and maybe that's the reason why he's keeping it. The hard way starts with Ludo traveling back to this castle with these mice that he now has control over, and he also has these two henchmen that was watching over Glossaryck from this jail cell that he was put inside. Ludo asks his henchmen to see if he was being fed or if he was being taken care of well, and they both said no, and he's like, okay, that's good. So he checks on Glossaryck to see how he's doing, so that way he can try to get him to do his every bidding. To his surprise, Glossaryck doesn't seem to be harmed at all. Out of frustration, he asks him to teach him all the spells in the spellbook so that way he would know how to use the magic wand that he has. Glossaryck's like, okay, fine. He seems very confused as to why he would be so willing to help him out, but the main reason why is because he doesn't really have an agenda or an ulterior motive. He just has a job, and because Ludo is now the owner of the spellbook, he has to help the owner of the spellbook. The first spell that he teaches Ludo is Levitato, which is to levitate things and to move things. Eventually he does actually complete the spell, and of course Ludo is incredibly happy about it. If anything, he tends to use the spell a bit too much. Near the end of the episode with Ludo sleeping with his magic wand, he was imagining his magic wand, saying that apparently there's a page in the spell book that Star has seen but he hasn't seen, and he goes up to Glossaryck and is like, hey Glossaryck, have you not shown me this page? And he's like, yeah, I haven't shown you it. Of course he demands to see it because he's really curious. Glossaryck warns him that there is a chance that it may corrupt him, and he doesn't really care, he just wants to see it. Once he accesses the page, this big purple cloud opens up in the sky and Ludo is floating in the air, and his magic wand is apparently glowing. His eyes, they turn the same color and the same pattern as the green vortex that you see in Crystal Clear. Not quite as much, but like there is some sort of similarity. When Ludo starts talking, it's actually Toffee's voice that's coming out of his mouth. And apparently Toffee and Glossaryck know each other. Glossaryck doesn't seem that surprised too, which is really weird to see. Toffee asks him like, oh, it's useless, you'll never get Ludo on your side, and Glossaryck responds like he doesn't really have a side. Toffee seems really happy about that. There was one scene with Ludo and his magic wand where he was just talking to it as if it was a living being, and at first you think that he's just mentally insane since he doesn't really have anyone else to talk to besides Glossaryck. When he talks to it the second time on his bed, you realize that he's actually not making up these conversations in his head, like the wand is actually speaking to him, and we're just not able to hear the wand speak. And it kind of made me wonder whether or not it was actually Toffee that's speaking to Ludo through the wand, just in a different voice, or like in a way that doesn't make it so obvious to Ludo that he is in fact talking to Toffee. Another thing is that how is Toffee able to talk to Ludo in the first place? Because obviously at the end of the episode, you know, Toffee's able to speak to Glossaryck through Ludo's body. It was a very surprising end, and it made me way more curious as to how Toffee was able to achieve all these things as well. We also get to learn more about Ludo and his past, most notably how his relationship with his dad was. He apparently learned everything by himself, like his dad never gave him any guidance as to what to do with his life and what to learn, and also, like, he never had a caring parent by his side, which is pretty noticeable in this episode where he tries to force Glossaryck into being the sort of substitute father figure, which was pretty funny to see, but at the same time it's kind of like sad too, because you can tell that he always wanted somebody to care for him and he just never had that. Toffee may have a much bigger role in this season than we may initially thought. Like, sure, you don't really see him like actually doing things, but you can tell that he's doing a lot of things behind the scenes that we're just not able to see. I also had a lot of questions as to how Toffee was connected to that one page in the spell book, and how Glossaryck knows about Toffee too. He didn't seem very surprised that Toffee was talking through Ludo. If anything, he kind of knew that that was going to happen. You start to realize that there is more at stake, both with the universe as well as every single person that is living in this universe. And Toffee may play an even bigger role too. Who knows, maybe he's the person that's behind the interdimensional Fritz and the green vortex, and maybe he does have a pretty close connection to someone who wrote in the spell book. Like, maybe it could be Eclipsa. That's my theory. Like, maybe he is either biologically related to Eclipsa, or maybe he worked alongside her while she was still around. So that was my thoughts on episodes 34 and 35. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys later. Bye!